Welcome to the Strongman Say podcast. Strongman
Close enough.
podcast.
Yep.
Same thing. A big few weeks in Strongman recently with the middle band series and stuff like that taking place. A lot of novice comps, back to the Rat and a few others around this place. So it's been pretty busy. We are behind by a week. We know there was huge expectation for our podcast last week.
All those five people
the
waiting.
5 of you waiting ambitiously and patiently for our podcast to get released. But Leigh was away in Queensland coaching at Queensland Strongest, and I was getting my car from Tassie after 2 months.
Less exciting.
Yeah, not quite as exciting. What did you think of the middle band series?
It was good. Queensland's was good.
Yeah.
As usual, like big turnouts in some weight classes and then no one in some of the others. No one in like the 82s women. Mm-hmm. So like heavies were good, masters were good.
Okay, that's really
big,
promising.
Yeah, a few big masters came out, which was cool. 105's big as always at the moment.
Yeah, 105s is really big at the moment.
And 64's the most, there's 4.
Yeah.
Which is more than all the other women.
Yeah, which still isn't huge.
No, not at all. So
yeah, and then the other comps that we had, Killmeister, WA had a middle band, and Compound Conception in South Australia.
Yep.
It looked like Queensland and Compound were probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Killmeister and Western Australia, which I mean, Killmeister's surprising being in New South Wales, which is usually quite a strongman state.
Especially for heavyweights.
Yeah. Considering there wasn't a heap in there this time around. I thought it was a pretty solid weekend.
Yep.
Some of the performances, irrespective of the podiums or the other competitors in the classes, were really good.
Yeah.
Like there were some really great performances across the board in some of the weight classes. But probably surprising that there were so many empty podiums. Like the actual attendance number for these competitions, Queensland Strongest Man having empty podiums, 4 in the 64s, was it?
Yeah. But then only 1 in 73s and 2 in opens.
2 in opens. There was 180 man. I want 880 kilo.
180 man.
That's the whole problem, right? It wasn't man. It was a man.
Yeah.
Killmeister, obviously, pretty low attendance numbers as well.
Yep.
Compound Conception, probably better attendance numbers, but still not really full podiums. And then Western Australia sort of similar, where there was reasonable competitive numbers, but like not huge, I think, as well. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out the other day if, because there's so much riding on each comp, each qualifier, are less people competing, or are people picking and choosing, seeing somebody else and going, no, I won't do that one.
Yeah, or do we just not have the competitor numbers to warrant how many comps we've got at the moment?
Yeah, maybe we thought we had more people wanting to compete.
Yeah.
Or maybe a lot of people just say they want to compete.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common.
Yeah. Gym heroes.
Yeah. Everyone that's like, just give me a comp. I need a comp.
Everyone wants to be a strongman until they have to compete against strongmen.
Yeah. Yeah. Just you wait until I get a comp, bro. I'm going to smash you. Yeah. And then they're like, not that comp.
Yeah. Oh, that's a bit heavy.
Oh, no.
Oh, you're doing it? Nah, I might just choose a different qualifier.
Yeah, I don't like that event. No.
Yeah. I just thought it was really interesting. I mean, not a slight on the competitors at all, but even looking at the podiums and stuff like that in terms of, one, I felt like the podium numbers were probably a little bit low. Like having empty podiums at like qualifiers when people should be, or the idea is people are really working to qualify for these big comps to find their place. I found it interesting that there were so many empty podiums, but then also looking at, the fierceness of some of the weight classes and competitors that are in Australia. It seemed that like the podiums were at a reasonable standard, but I felt like that a lot of the podiums probably, some athletes qualified quite easily.
Yeah. Yeah, some people just turned up and competed and still proved that they're strong enough to hit the weights, not 0.
Yeah.
And go to the comp. But that last band, either no one's wanting to compete next year or that last band like VIX and everything is going to be stacked.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to go, oh shit.
Yeah.
This is my last shot.
Yeah.
Like thinking about the ASM.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like what? There's ACT, TAS, WA and VIX.
Yeah, it's coming up.
And then you've got Eddie still wanting a spot.
Yep.
I don't know if Aiden Kanini wants a spot or Thomas Wren wants a spot.
Sure, they all want a spot.
Fardy still doesn't have a spot.
Yeah.
I don't know if big guys wants to compete.
A lot of those big guys are still vying for those spots.
Yep.
Yeah, which means that it is going to be fierce towards the back end of the year.
Maybe they'll have a group chat and be like, okay, you do this one,
Yeah.
I'll do this one.
I feel like that's going on anyway. That's why like, when we talked about releasing comp lists in the last podcast, you know what I mean? Like making sure people don't dodge people or making sure that, I mean, the idea behind the qualifiers is that we get people competing more regularly. What I imagine the idea behind it is that we get people competing more regularly
against
each other.
Yeah.
Right. But I think what it's turned into is there's so many options that people can literally dodge competition and find a comp where they can qualify.
Yep.
And steal a qualification reasonably easy, you know, like I said, some of those podiums or some of the podiums were great contested feats. I think a lot of them were I think that we think that we've probably got numbers that we don't, where we've got the same people or the same very good competitors, and there's a handful of us that are at one level.
Yeah.
And then there's probably a bit of a gap where people are still trying to come up to that sort of same standard. So I don't know whether our expectations are too high or whether we just actually think that we've got probably more numbers at a standard that we probably don't quite yet. Like Australia has, comparative to the other countries, very good athletes that could represent around the world, which we've seen lately.
Yeah.
Right. Which we've seen, which is really, really cool, but maybe not the depth of competition that other countries do to run these sort of formats.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that still don't have confidence that they can do it.
Yeah.
Talking to some people that are like, oh, I just want to win this comp in Australia.
Yeah.
And then I'll go overseas.
Yeah.
I'm like, you might not ever win that comp.
Yeah.
Like one person might be ahead of you. You might be second forever and never go overseas because you don't feel like you're number one.
Yeah.
Instead of just going overseas.
Yeah.
Or going and exploring or going and being like, I'll have a crack at ASM.
Yeah.
I don't have to win New South Wales or I don't have to win this. I'll have
to
a crack
go
at
overseas.
the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, with the middle band series, they have to win some of those comps.
Yeah, you have to qualify.
To be able to go to ASM and stuff like that as well. But I mean, any standout performances from the middle band series?
Dylan in Queensland, first comp back since Arnold Pro Show 2019. Dylan Lockhart.
Yep.
He's a big
boy. Yeah, I really like.
He's a big human. He's
so happy.
Yeah,
because he's just a big unit, and I see so much potential. Like he's just got the stature to be a fucking weapon.
Yep.
Yeah, and he works hard too. Like he's a good, solid strongman. So he won.
Yep.
Great.
That's he won Queensland, so he'll go to ASM,
which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, even when he first came over, because he was from America.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was showing me videos loading stones, and he's like, I just load to 1.5 so that I can work on my extension. Yeah. I'm like, that's the first tall person I've heard say that.
That isn't coached by us. When I see someone lazy with extension, I'm like, well, I have to bend my back to get a stone hump, so should you, just in case when it gets really heavy, you can't get that lazy.
Yeah. So, just from the start, he was like, I just load things high because then I don't get lazy.
Well, because it's comparative as well. Like, your 1.5 is our 1.3.
Yeah, so he ripped through it. There was like Mitch, Big G's partner and stuff. Like he's still newer, I guess, than a lot of other people, but... Yeah, there was some good heavyweights up there. 105s, like I said, are always stacked.
Yeah. Nick Dunn.
Yep.
Did great. Came second.
Miles.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, ripped through it. Just all attitude. Full send. No idea what he's doing.
Which is exactly what strongman is, right? Which is strongman. Not exactly what strongman is. Don't get me wrong. We make a job out of helping people not just do the full send and refine them a little bit, but I think it's the cornerstone of being good is having that attitude to start off with and then refining it, right? Like you need that full send attitude. Yeah.
You're rewarded if you go in and just go.
It is a sport where you are more rewarded for being Hmong strong.
Whereas powerlifting, it does not reward you if you go in and full send it.
Nah.
So like Miles went in and picked up his log and started doing a rep before anybody even counted him in.
Yeah.
So before they're like, okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1, timer start. Like before that happened, he's already like trying to do a rep.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, we haven't started yet. And he's like, oh, okay. So that was powerlifting. Like you're done. Like your attempt's done. Like get off the platform. You don't get another shot.
No, you don't get to go again.
No.
Bar broke the floor. You're out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Killmeister Ryan did really well in the heavyweights. I'm not sure. I didn't really see much of the other weight classes.
I don't think there was many.
I talked to Sean about it as well.
Yeah,
there wasn't a heap of competitors.
No,
and Thomas Wren pulled out quite early.
Moved the yoke a meter.
Yeah.
Apparently. And then was injured. Yeah. I don't know. I heard he still asked if he could get invited to ASM though.
It's the most Thomas Wren thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't qualify, but can I qualify?
Can I still go?
Yeah. WA, I didn't see too much of. One of my clients ran that. Dan, who's doing really well actually. We're Deathwish Dan.
Yeah.
So he competed in the 105s and took that out. He did quite well, but once again, one of those comps where, and we sort of discussed it, there's another gear for competitors. And that's what I think's missing in the comps as well, is when there's no competition, you kind of miss that other gear, right? Like that competitive gear that makes the day fun for lifters and competitors.
Yep.
It's nice to qualify, but it's nice to be pushed.
Yeah.
It's nice to feel like you've got competition, you got to work for it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you see that like Queensland's in the 105s, even the 90s.
Yeah.
Because Peanut came down and did 90s.
Yeah.
Then Mark Lawler did a last minute, I'm going to cut to 90s.
Andrew Stewart do it. Andrew Stewart did it.
He won it. He won
sick.
It.
Great. Yeah, really cool.
He won it, so qualified for the Clash Saturday in January.
Yeah. So he's in the 90s.
Yep.
He's a nice dude, actually. I like Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was back and forth the whole time. Like you'd see them do something and it's like, who won?
Yeah.
And it's like, he did by a second.
Yeah.
By half a second.
How
like
great.
It was so tight the whole time.
100%, which is so much better for spectators to watch, but so much better for competitors too. And also I think even if like Mark came second, it's great to come second when you're getting a push.
Yeah.
And you feel like you did pretty well.
Yeah, you earned it.
But you were bested.
You worked hard for
it. 100%. And then compound conception. Eddie Hall, the big upset.
Williams.
Yeah. Oh, Eddie Hall. Yeah, sorry. They've just been hanging out with each other so much.
Yeah.
Cam Taylor, no longer the worst thing to happen to Strongman.
Yeah.
Reece Keane.
Yeah, made it in. I think, what was it, Eddie, he hurt his elbow on the block press.
Yeah.
I think. And then the tiebreaker was that front hold.
Yeah. Which refereeing could have been stricter on.
We need a proper tiebreaker event.
Yeah, I reckon bring back sumo wrestling. Oh, man.
Tug of war.
So back in the day, and I don't know whether you can get some footage and like drop this in, but back in the day, like 1982 World's Strongest Man, there is footage of Bill Kazmaier and Sigmason.
Nah, there was a few of other guys that like aren't big names.
Yeah.
And like Kazmaier like tore his pec or tore something. So it was like do or die in the sumo wrestling, and like his eyes are like lit up, and he's like
literally
staring
just
a guy
like
down.
Two human gorillas going at it, like full sumo attire. So they're like sitting there in like the little sumo. Yeah, it's rad. It's honestly, it's worth watching because it's like one of my all-time favorite World's Strongest Man, and like it's a video that I show people. Is like, this is what we need to bring back for tiebreakers.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that we're not going to, but there's the 1982 and there's a few different versions of it throughout World's Strongest Man where they did man-on-man like events where it was like best the person across from you in like a tournament sort of round robin. But it is two human gorillas charging towards each other. Like, and it's, you know, you watch sumo wrestling, they're big guys, but this is like jacked, they're just enormous. And his eyes, he's just so amped. I fucking love it. Hey? Like, if there was
one of the rounds, he just scares the other guy out of the ring. Like they go, he runs, and the other guy's just like backing up.
If you could describe any event in strongman as being erotic to other men, like that would be the one. like watching that, it just G's me up so much.
Would they ever bring it back?
I don't reckon they will bring it back somehow. I reckon maybe like insurance might be a big one.
Well, we played around with the pole push.
The pole push is really fun.
Which is kind of like basically like a log pole, 2 handles either end, and you have to push each other out of the ring.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the
really
similar
cool.
non-contact
Without
way of doing it.
beating someone out of a ring.
Yeah.
Which is fun, but it definitely is like body weight dependent too.
Yeah.
You know, like it definitely helps having a bit more weight behind it. So the heavier competitor not always wins, but definitely has a much fairer chance.
Arm wrestling? That arm wrestling for a couple of years until someone broke their
really
arm.
just freaks me out, man.
Oh, the snapped arms.
Yeah, the snapped arms. The arm wrestling just kind of.
But if you just made it every tiebreaker where the points go back and they're even, the arm wrestle, everyone will start going in the gym and doing this, and everyone will start arm wrestling.
Yeah, and look, in fairness, cool, and the pro arm wrestling guys are awesome. And there's that guy with a giant hand and forearm. Have you seen him?
Russian.
Yeah, just like one arm is just deformed into this huge forearm hand thing he's got going on. It's just wild. Like arm wrestling as a sport is wild. But you know, back when I was in my early strongman, there was like like arm wrestle. You know, like you're the big guy and everyone wants to arm wrestle you.
Yep.
Like I'd be like, all right, bro. But then, like, for 3 days later, I'd be like, oh, my rotator cuff's pretty fucked. Like, I'm not used to that. Like, I'm benching. Like, I don't have this.
I used to think it was nuts, and then I started watching it and went down a YouTube rabbit hole of watching a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then found it really interesting, and I'm like, oh, this is actually fun.
All right, I'm
I really want to try it.
I'm going to put something to you guys. Russian slaps. All right, maybe we can the sumo wrestling, we can the arm wrestling, but we go to like a Russian slap off. Have you seen them like
until someone gets knocked out?
Yeah, have you seen them like set up from each other and just like crazy eyes, like slap each other across the face?
Yeah,
I'm thinking maybe that's the substitute. I'm thinking maybe that's the solution to our tiebreaker problem.
You want to win?
Yeah.
You got to earn it. What are you prepared to do?
No one would be coasting when that's on the line.
Yeah. I'm just hoping that I get some coaching out of it. Like you need
coaching.
You need some conditioning. Guys, just come in. We can condition your face today.
Imagine doing check-ins. Yeah. And it's just like, go find a brick wall and just start hitting
against it.
Sets of 10.
Sets of 10.
RPE 9. RPE 9.
RPE 9. Yeah. Don't go to a 10.
No.
We want you to remain conscious.
Yeah. Don't full send.
Don't full send on the slap.
Fucking broken hand injuries. Swords?
Yeah, sword fights. We could bring sword fights in.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
There needs to be something standard.
Yeah, to the death, preferably.
Yeah. Because the front hold, Eddie's straight up and down with a plate like this, and then Reese is like leaning back doing this.
A pretty good competition for someone coming from a powerlifting background. Like Reese is very fucking strong.
Yeah.
Like it's a good event to come into. I mean, I didn't look at the scores. I meant to before this, but
well, it was dead tight on points back.
Yeah. And I imagine that
and Nick and Miles did the same in Queensland. So they dead tied the whole way back, and their tiebreaker was power stairs.
Yeah.
Duck walked the implement in. It was the middleweight, and it was up 4 stairs.
Yeah, well, I don't like using one of the events from the comp.
No,
as
that's the problem because you already know.
You already know who's going to win it.
Miles won the event.
Yeah.
Nick came 4th.
Yeah.
So they're like, here's your tiebreaker. And it's almost like, well,
like, what's the point?
Yeah, it's not my thing.
Yeah. That, like something
Mason tried to do that to me at Compound.
Yeah.
I like tore my hand open and he's like, oh, it's a tiebreaker between me and Mason Cartwright.
Yeah.
He's like, you're not going to like it. We're going to do a farmer's hold. And I'm like, 1, my hand's fucked.
Yeah.
2, I suck at that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, just give it to him. And he's like, no, just go out and try it. You never know. And I'm like,
I do.
He's got a death grip.
Yeah.
I have a shit grip.
Yeah.
I'm not going out there.
That's like, it's not the promoter's fault in terms of like, it's like,
he was meant to do the pole push.
The pole push, right?
But he gave it away.
But I think that maybe going forward, comp should have a designated pre-advertised tiebreaker.
Yeah. So that you train for.
Yeah, or not even train for, just so you can't argue.
So
you're not making it up on the day, and it's like, oh well, like I'm shit at that. So it's not like it's not a conversation.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be a conversation. It should be like, okay, cool, this is a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And that way it's like, okay, well, I know that it's going to be a hold. And if I tiebreak, unfortunately, which hopefully is not the case, you win outright. But if we're pretty evenly matched throughout the day, we know what the tiebreaker is ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think that would be something worth looking at if it's coming up more and more, as opposed to like impromptu, negotiable tiebreakers.
Well, it seems so highly unlikely that anyone will tie.
Yeah.
But then in one weekend, 2 people tied.
Yeah, for sure.
And the 105s is nuts because there was like 6 people. So far
Yeah.
less likely to tie.
Yeah, I think it's also probably going to be more common when like compound conception happens, when you've got 2 people who are going back and forth all day, when the competition, I mean, the whole thing with strongman, like the reason why it's not sad, but just like unfortunate we are not getting full podiums is because like when you have 2 people competing, it's not a sport anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're sharing points back and forth all day. It's so hard to have someone come in and steal a bunch of points and mix up the placings a little bit, or do you know what I mean? Like when you have a comp of 15 people, some people will have good events, some people will have bad points, but bad events. But the pressure for athletes who are at the top, or those couple people who are at the top, means that like you literally have to win every event.
Yeah.
Or come second. But if you come third or fourth or have a bad event, done.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, that's strongman for sure, but it's less strongman. Like when you have competitions, it's not actually like that. Like when you have full categories of 8 to 10 people, there's points shared, and it mixes things up, and it creates interest in the sport as well. Where when there's 3 people in a competition, there's no points to be shared. It's the maximum points you can gain for any event is 3. The maximum point you can drop for any event is 2, right? Like if you as long as you can complete it. Where if you're competing in a bigger comp with 10 people, you can win an event and get 10 points, and you can come 8th in an event and get 2 points, and now you're down 8 points.
Yeah.
But someone else can sneak in there.
But you could also be like 8 seconds slower than first place and come 8th.
Yeah, for sure.
Which makes it a lot more interesting. It's not like you just do the bare minimum and come 8th.
Or there could be 3 of you, and one person wins the yoke by 10 seconds, and the next 2 people are 8 and 9 seconds behind, but they're still only a point behind.
Yeah.
Which is like, there's a clear disparity between the levels of the person, but there's no reward in terms of people sneaking in there to bolster points or get in between, and create a little bit more of create a little bit more competition throughout the day.
Should we change the point structure? If you win an event, do you get more points?
No, you can't revolutionize strongman. How dare you?
Don't change it.
Don't change what's broken.
Yeah.
I think we just need more competitors.
I
think we need. I think probably the goal would be to go, okay, cool. The format over the last 12 months has seen competitors spread thin between X amount of events and maybe less competition in those events to qualify. Do we condense the qualifications, or do we condense the competitions and run, like novice, intermediate level comps and condense the qualifiers, so all the competitors or all the competition is sort of more siphoned into a couple key comps where you actually get competition, where you actually get people having to fight to qualify, and create a bit more fierceness within those ranks.
Yeah, so half the comps, but then podium goes to Clash on the Saturday or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines anyway.
Yeah.
And then just keep trying to build up, have that like novice to intermediate level competition. So like have a pathway where the novices move to like intermediates, like, because we need to build the intermediates up to a point where they can start to look at those qualifying and be really competitive in there too. So because obviously with the numbers that we're at the moment, we clearly need to start to produce more athletes at that level and try to build them up so we have more lifters in those competitive classes too.
Yeah.
As opposed to the ones that have been there for the last 5 years. I mean, we talk about it all the time. We're just trying to stay ahead because we got in early. Yeah. There's a bunch of us like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's like 5 or 6 people in each weight class that have just kind of been here or managed to hold on the longest. And we're just a little bit further ahead.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of giving those people time, confidence, and competition opportunities to build confidence and to do comps that are achievable for them. They can build them back up to or build them into that top level as well.
Yeah. I think Queensland will kick back up a lot.
Queensland was the state, bro.
But I think it's starting to get more organised between gyms.
Yeah.
There's a good culture up there again. Like they come in on a Saturday and there's a big group and stuff like that.
Which is cool.
I think that will grow again. Yeah. Like New South is pretty good.
New South Wales has New South Wales Strongest Man has quite good attendance comparative to, I remember when I started, like Queensland was the state.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Queensland was the state. And now we look at it and you've got Queensland Strongest Man versus like even New South Wales Strongest Man, like half the competitors in there at the moment.
Yeah.
And then Victoria's Strongest Man has a reasonable amount now. Like Victoria is definitely a competitive state now, especially heavyweights.
It was better at one stage.
In Vic?
Yeah.
Very
like
early. Very early.
18, something like that.
Probably earlier.
Yeah. Because I think they had comp sign-ups for like Vics and stuff. Yeah. There was more females than males.
And it depends on the class. But yeah, the female classes were probably more competitive once upon a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're talking earlier about the international comps and people waiting to do ASM to compete or win ASM to go overseas. And we've sort of seen quite a few athletes break the mold in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, we've had Rongo go over and do an SCL. Jordan went over and did 2 SCL comps. Fardy, Joe, Kimi Tonga.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's more from North Side that went and competed at Middle East Strongest Man.
So we had Bosnian SCL. We had the Middle East Strongest Man woman, and then the Ismata, is it?
Yeah, that.
I don't know if I said that right, but
somewhere in England,
Jordan
was his first one.
Yeah, Jordan doing the 2 Finland, and everyone representing really well. Like Jordan came second in
second
Finland.
in one.
Rongo came second.
Yeah.
So some really good placings and stuff like that.
I think Joe won.
Even better
in the open women's.
Yeah. So I mean, also talks to what we were saying about the quality of Australian athletes is quite high as well. So like we're going overseas and representing really well.
Yeah.
Which is really cool to see.
Nah, I think a lot of people new in the sport don't realize how big it is in Europe and how many opportunities there are. Like you can just message and be like, hey, can I come and do this comp? And they'll be like, okay, well, what can you lift?
If they see you at, if they see that you're at the standard, 100%. Like
and if you're strong enough, they're like, oh yeah, awesome, come over. Like,
I think that's probably one of the biggest faults of a lot of strong men or even athletes in general, that they'll sit back and wait for an invite
or a sponsor, or anything,
and it's just they don't know who you are, bro. They're on the other side of the fucking world.
Yeah,
like people are like, once I win ASM, I'll get invited, blah, blah, blah. It's like, even if you win ASM, do you think that over in Finland they give a flying fuck who Australia's Strongest Man is or actually know who you are? Like, to think that you've got the clout or you think you've got the notoriety overseas is just wildly untrue. Like, you don't just get on the map suddenly. The how you get on the map of international promoters is by going over and doing international competitions and doing quite well. So, I mean, I remember like we had qualifying pathway when we did SCL for sure, but like you still had to message, you still had to organize it, you still had to pay for it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No one knows who it is. Like even if you were looking at Europe, like who's Italy's Strongest Man?
Yes. We don't know.
Who's Ireland's Strongest Man? You'd take a guess that it's Par, but you don't know.
No.
Because you haven't seen the comp posted.
Yeah.
You don't know the results.
It's on the other side of the world. Like, we're so insular.
Yeah.
But then we expect people to know who we are because our egos say that, like, oh, but I'm the best in Australia. People should know who I am, or I should have a following, or whatever it might be. But like promoters don't. Like promoters, to get into international competition, to make that breakthrough, like often you have to actually just put your hand out and ask. Like, message Yoni, like message the organizer of SEL, create a relationship with like Lyndon. OSG?
Yeah. Full blanked on his name.
Yeah. Sorry, OSG.
Yeah.
Just off the top of my head. It's been a while.
Lynn.
Lynn, yeah. Lynn Morehouse. It's about like creating relationships with those promoters and actually like trying to find opportunities to go overseas, not wait for them to come to you, because they won't come unless you're working for it or unless you're putting your hand out or making yourself known or making contact with those promoters. But I think it's really cool to see that athletes are making the move to go overseas and test where they're at against a bigger pond, because, I mean, having competed overseas quite a lot, I think, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely big fish, small pond here.
Yeah.
Because we actually don't realize the standard of what overseas. Like, I mean, when I went over to OSG, the heavyweights weren't very competitive in Australia at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember going over there and watching the heavyweight comp and being like, these guys, this isn't America's Strongest Man. This is OSG for them. This is a qualifying pathway. And holy shit, these guys would run circles around all our heavyweights.
Yeah.
Just
they're like 6'5", 105s that run and move.
What are they eating over there, man? Like our heavyweights look very different too, you know? Like, our heavyweights look like traditional heavyweights. Like, when I was in America, I was like, these heavyweights are fucking huge. Like, these 105s look like heavyweights and our heavyweights look like they're just like jacked. Like, they got delts.
There's I can't remember his name. He did OSG. His last name's like Cotton or something. Like super American guy. And at first he looks like a 105. Yeah. And then you see him standing next to people and you're like, oh, no, he's a heavyweight.
Yeah, he's just jacked.
But lean.
Yeah.
But just like trap, shoulder.
Totally
like,
different.
No gut.
Yeah.
Just huge.
Yeah. Just big humans.
Yeah, the way he moves, you're like, oh, yeah, he's a 105. It's like, no, he's 140 or something.
Yeah. And I think people probably undervalue or under-acknowledge. Everyone wants to do OSG.
Yeah.
Because it's probably at the forefront of our brains. It's advertised a lot through Official Strongman. Our cultures are similar.
Australia, we follow America.
Yeah, 100%, right? And because it's easy to get an invite because you can do an online qualifier and get a nice little email that makes you feel real special, right?
Yep.
But Europe is kind of where it's at.
There's a lot more going on. Not as much for the women.
Yeah, agreed.
There's still pockets of it, but you'd really have to find it. Like,
I think OSG is still the comp for females.
Yeah. Like Red went to Norway.
Yeah.
And there's a few things like that. And a lot of the Americans come across. England's probably better for the women. There's some very strong females.
Agreed.
But yeah, for the guys, for the 90s, for the 105s, and especially for heavies, SCL's got 30 comps in a circuit in each year.
Yeah, the European circuit's amazing. Even like Ultimate Strongman. So you got SCL in Europe.
Oh, Ultimate do a lot of women's stuff as well.
Yeah, Ultimate do a lot of women's stuff. And then Ultimate Strongman have like their kind of series over Europe where, I mean, this year's was in Paris. They usually have the Ukraine, like Czech Republic. That's only like a handful. They run a whole heap of dedicated shows too, like weight class shows. Yeah. And I think that's sort of what we were speaking about sort of before the podcast is you look at USS Nationals and what's like 400 or something.
Nationals in America had like 700 people in one day. They had like 13 lanes and they just went non-stop and just chewed through it. Wow. So you're just a number.
Big fish, small pond, right? Like it's different over there.
You're just a number. They have like quantity.
Which is, I mean, why we're sort of talking or why it's so impressive that Australians can go over and do so well. Like our quality compared to the competition quality is really high. But then what, OSG 300?
I think so.
Something like that, like 20 to 30 a class.
And it's in a big undercover like stadium and stuff, and it looks really cool, but the only people in the stands are your family and friends, which is no different than here.
Yeah, I think there's
no big audience. There's no, like the SCL that Jordan did in England, because Lawrence Charlet did like a YouTube on it. The same as the one we did in Finland. There's cheerleaders in the background. There's like old 90s techno playing in the background.
Like, what's the best?
It's a party.
We're competing.
Like, it is a full party. The town gets around it.
Yeah,
like,
100%. The old Euro, it was literally like Eurovision playing in the background. Like techers while you're competing, and it's like Euro classics, and it's so good.
You get free drink bottles. You get like all this like random things. The gym that we went to, they had a bowling alley and like PlayStations. They're like, help yourselves. You guys are athletes.
Really
so
cool.
we're bowling all night, having drinks. And like,
oh, that was not good.
That's when Danny Mel and the Scottish guys got carried out because they got too drunk.
And Leigh, we've always, so Leigh and I have traveled a little bit together to compete and stuff overseas, and I've competed overseas, and like I always backed myself to, I mean, hopefully win the competition or do quite well, but like definitely win the after party. Like if there's one thing Australians can do, and one thing that we do quite well is like last man standing. When we were in SCL, actually, when I got to India in SCL and I was in the elevator and the promoter came in, Yoni was like, "I'm surprised you're alive. Good to see you." Because the last time I saw him, it was Leigh and I left out of everybody else in this like basement Finnish bar doing shots with the promoters. Everyone else had gone home. They're like gambling down there. Yeah. And I remember coming up and it was just like blasted, like just absolutely trashed. And I remember coming up outside and I still have that video of this guy speaking Finnish in my video, like while we're standing outside. I was like, "Where's the hotel, man?" And he's like, "Right over there." And I'm like, "Oh." So we ended up like passing out. I just like fell asleep with like coins down my side, like stuck to me. Like we woke up in the morning and we're like, "We've got to fly out today." And both of us on the flight home, like we're so hungover. And we're on this tiny little airplane where you feel every turn, and there's 20 other strongman guys all feeling real shit. Like we all had a crack. And I remember just sitting there going through hot and cold flushes, just with my hands on the seat in front of me, just like for an hour and a half. It was the worst flight.
Tiniest little plane.
Yeah, yeah. And Danny getting carried out.
Yeah,
so good. The Irish guys talked real big game, and they were getting us all shots of Fisk or something like that. It's like that peppermint stuff, and they were going real hard. And then suddenly it just absolutely flaked it, getting carried out.
But that was like a real weird night of everyone's bowling and drinking. But then you look around and you're just like, Scottish guys, Canadian guys, Swedish guys, a couple of Americans. And I'm like, this is such a cool sport.
It is a cool sport, yeah. And that's the best thing about traveling overseas.
And that's why Europe's good. Yeah. Whereas America, like, it's the World Series, but it's America.
Yeah. Some downsides to
Whereas Europe, like, everyone's different countries, different cultures, different accents, different languages, and everyone just gets along.
Because American,
cool, because you'll do the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you'll have a like common ground in the strongman. I think America, it's a similar culture. Also, America's very expensive to travel to, so you get less international competitors. Like OSG is, I know it's the title of World's Strongest Man.
Yeah,
but one thing so I did all three championships in 12-month period. I did the Worlds for Ultimate Strongman, I did Worlds for SCL, and I did Worlds for OSG. OSG was primarily American. You get there, you're one of 300, you get your t-shirt, and it's go time. You have to look after everything yourself. Like it's very much just like a competition. And you're going over there just to compete, and you're a number, right? It's a great competition. It's run really well. There is zero crowd. There is zero atmosphere.
Yep.
There's cameras, and it looks fantastic. Production is fantastic.
Live stream, everything.
Great live stream. It's run very, very well, but there is very little crowd. There is very little atmosphere. There is very little athlete care in comparison, right? Like it's a great comp, and it's fine if you're comparing it to just like a competition or an Arnold's or something like that, where it's your name's called, there's 4 lanes, let's go. Where SCL and even more so Ultimate Strongman. So Ultimate Strongman was the next one I did. I did a couple over in Europe. Huge crowds. Massive. Like Ultimate Strongman was my favorite. Europe was definitely my favorite. I competed on the Ukraine on a beach with hundreds of people. Crowding around, where you would finish events and you couldn't get through the crowd because people wanted to like touch you, take photos with you. At the end of the competition, I was holding babies with my trophy. So people could take pictures, right? Like I'm standing there like putting kids on my shoulders. Like you are a celebrity over there, right? In Australia, no one knows what the fuck strongman is.
Well, look at like Yuri over there. He's got his own beer.
Yeah, yes.
In the Ukraine, like a strongman.
One of my mates has got his own beer. Like he's got a beer labeled after him, right? Like at the Little Vale Brewery, which they hold a comp at. So I think just in terms of like where the sport is at or like what the buy into the sport, I don't know whether they have just less going on in those Eurobloc countries, but when we competed in Czech Republic, we competed at this like brewery, and there was a huge crowd, massive crowd, cameras, the whole deal. Like you walk out with the flags, you do a big circle, you get picked up from the airport, they pay for your accommodation for the weekend, they take you out for meals. When I was in the Ukraine, every dinner we would have it with all the crew. Yeah. So you would go in and all the competitors would have dinner together. You would sort of stay in the same hotel. It feels like you're an athlete. And I think people really underestimate or just don't know the value of actually going out and doing those comps, because one, you're no longer a big fish in a small pond. Suddenly you're actually able to test yourself against a broader competitor list and actually see where the standard is, because it blew my mind. Like, it was the first time where I really felt that, and I'd been overseas before and I felt like I could have done better and I didn't, but I was still capable of being the best. But this time I went over there and I was like, whoa. I went over there and I competed really well, and I realized there was another gear for me to unlock with Strongman. So I think that's what a big thing that people miss by not going overseas. But then the SCL was great again. Like, both times we did SCL, looked after, hotels paid for, you get picked up, you eat with like a lot of the athletes, or you have a little bit more to do with the athletes and stuff like that. The competitions are run fantastically. The atmosphere is better. So
even Finland, like the 90s 105 Worlds. Yeah. So I came third. Yeah. And then coming back the next year, they're like, if you come back, food's taken care of. Yeah. Accommodation's taken care of. We're going to do that for the podiums. Yeah. To try to get people back.
And they prove like, you prove yourself to the promoters, and they love having you. Yeah. Like, they love having me at SCL. Like, then it likes having me over at OSG, because I was kind of like an upset the first time I did it, I guess, getting a podium and being no one, because no one knows who you are in Australia. So you go over there, and like, the only reason anyone knew who I was because like 3 weeks before, they didn't know who I was, but they were like, are you the guy who pulled 380 Raw? Yeah. Because I pulled it in the Victoria's Strongest Man just beforehand. But like, apart from that, like, no one knows who you are overseas. So unless you're putting your hand up for it and creating a name for yourselves and going out of your way to create a name for yourselves overseas, you can't wait for opportunities to qualify. You've just got to go do it. And this is why it's so impressive to see these guys do it, because that's a big up for the sport, and globally seeing Australia recognised as a force on the strongman.
Yeah, which eventually needs to happen. Yeah. If we want people to come here, they need to see
it's too expensive.
But we need to have athletes that people go, oh, I want to compete against them, or I want to beat them. Whereas I think Clash and what Anthony Furnham's doing is trying to bring that Euro car park comp that has a crowd, that has a vibe into America. Yeah. Because America's just so like big and numbers game.
Yeah, for sure.
Is trying to combine the two.
Yeah. I will just mention as well, like, the difference. We're talking about America being, and I forgot to say this before, but America being like OSG being American, right? The Eastern Euro guys, and talking about Australia being too expensive, the Eastern Euro guys don't give a shit about OSG.
No, there's a handful that get across and do it.
100%.
But few and far.
Most of them, like the best guys, the guys who are podium at Australia's Ultimate Strongman, and the guys who podium, a lot of the guys who podium at like Finland SCL or like the European SCL, they don't do OSG because America is super expensive. It's super far, and their dollar is terrible. So for them to go over to the States and compete, it's totally different. So my biggest take home for after going overseas and competing in all three was that if you want to call yourself world's strongest man, you kind of have to win both.
Do a bit of both. Yeah.
I just don't think that like you can win OSG and you're winning honestly, no, like OSG is America's strongest man with a few internationals. Yeah. Because the spectrum of different countries that can compete there, especially as of late, very few. Where Ultimate Strongman, so many of the European countries come in, like the mix of European countries, because it's so cheap to fly from European countries, that we had 30 competitors. And I had 30 competitors at OSG, and I reckon 20 were American, or 15 to 18 were American, and then there was like 7 to 10 that were at internationals. Where when I did Ultimate Strongman, we had 30 competitors, and I would say there would be no more than 2 from the same country.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like way, way broader spectrum of athletes from like nationality perspective.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. I think that people look at OSG as the top, but realistically, like they probably should be, especially in the 105 class, they should be probably broadening their horizons to understanding that there's actually better comps to do. And better comps in terms of a competitor standpoint, competition standpoint, a feeling valued as an athlete standpoint, but also an exposure to better competition.
Yeah, and where we are in the world, like it's a 20-hour flight either way you go. Like,
yeah,
one's
it's expensive anyway.
Europe at the moment is cheaper.
Yeah,
because I looked at OSG and then I looked at France.
Yeah,
for the World Ultimate.
Should do France.
Yeah, I want to next year.
Yeah,
I think I'll pick that over OSG because then I can do multiple comps, go through Europe.
Yeah,
and compete against more people.
Yeah,
versus just America, Americans.
Totally
I think if I did the States, it would be Clash.
Yeah,
I think I would go and do Clash over OSG.
Why?
Because it'd be more fun. I think eventually that will build up better and better. I don't know if OSG can build up much bigger or better than it is. Like with the format that it's got and the numbers that it's got and where it's at in Florida, if it's not moving around and it just stays in Daytona and Florida, I don't think it's going to be able to change much. I think it'll just be what it is. Whereas I think Clash has the potential to move around, to travel. They want to bring a comp here.
Agreed.
It's going to link up a lot better. It's going to grow a lot better. So I think long term may not have the title of being like world's strongest under 90 105, but the potential's bigger at the moment, unless OSG changes its format.
I mean, Clash is still all-American, basically.
Yep.
For the most part, Canadian. Doesn't have the title.
No.
So would you spend the money to go over to the States for something that doesn't potentially give you the title? It gives you nothing.
Well, I mean, you can just put a title on anything, right?
You can, but there's a competition that has the title.
Yeah.
I just think I'm just challenging in terms of choices to do from a competitor standpoint. I mean, I like the idea of Clash. I think it would suit me. Like, it's very varied.
Yeah.
Which I really, really like. The only thing for me is dropping that kind of money.
Yeah.
Losing income for like 2 weeks or whatever.
Yep.
Dropping the money to go and justifying it to just do a comp.
Yeah.
Versus to go hunt down the title of World's Strongest Man under 105.
Yeah. Yeah, the title's the thing that's going to keep it.
Yeah. I'd love to see the title go for 105s anyway, and 90s maybe, for example, like the title move to Clash.
Yeah.
But obviously,
that's what I'm wondering if long term, if that becomes the case, where everyone's like, yes, that has the title, but this is probably where the competition's at.
Yeah.
Like, that'll be interesting. We'll get more stacked.
Yeah, I like Clash. I think it's great. That's my only like hurdle.
Yeah.
To, like, signing up to one is the output for not much.
Yeah.
Like, and so there's prize money, which is great because there's not a lot of prize money in Strongman, but there's prize money, but it wouldn't cover expenses, loss of income, that kind of stuff. Like, you got to weigh it up. Really, like in terms of the value of competing, and like I'd love to compete, but like I don't have that kind of money to drop on something that doesn't mean a whole lot at this point in time, from a business standpoint, but from like a personal standpoint as well. Like I'd love to do it. Like if I run the lottery, I'd go over every year.
There just needs to be something close to America, where there's something else that can all tie into it. But
correct.
There's not.
Yeah, and I mean, in fairness, part of that is like having been to America a lot of times to compete as well.
Yeah.
Like competing over in Paris, for example, is more appealing because you get to go to Paris.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
And then and then you're an hour flight from
but you're an hour flight from doing in that month, or take 3 weeks, you're an hour away from doing like a whole bunch of comps, which makes it worthwhile because you can get a heap of competitive experience, but also like compete against a whole bunch of people.
Yep.
Versus going over for one comp, primarily Americans at this point in time. So I'm curious. I'd love to see where it goes, but some time yet to see whether it's worth committing the funds and time to.
Yeah. Not sure. All too hard. For America, it's all too hard.
I just want to be strong.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about it. I just want to do competition. A lot of comps, a lot of injuries. or seeing some injuries and stuff like that coming up from more regular competing. A lot of comps doing similar events, meaning that people are training similar structures or exposing similar structures to stress quite a lot, which means like recurring injuries and stuff like that at the moment popping up amongst general athletes, which also affects the competitor numbers too. Do you know what I mean? Like Tom Rand pulling out twice or having 2 pullouts in recent competition. You know, we saw ASM was a great example of like, I would say 60% of those competitors managing an injury, at least 60% managing an injury on the day. Do you know what I mean? Even Jordan was having huge problems with his forearms and elbows and stuff like that on the day. Corey, hamstring recurring issue, which I think we're on top of now. But it's interesting to see so many recurring injuries. But like, I mean, it is a sport of strongman. It's an extreme sport. I think once you have a kink in the chain, you can weld it back together. There's probably a breaking point or a more susceptible breaking point there too. Thoughts on injuries, injury prevention, and competition?
If you already have injuries, then that's the first thing. If you have bad knees, and you just notoriously have bad knees, then you got to fix your knees.
Bullshit.
But like comp to comp, so I wrote up a lot of like Fix Strongest programs and got things put together. And like when I look at a comp now, I start to pull apart and go, okay, look at the 5 events. And like, so Vix, everything in strongman is very like back. Probably back and biceps. A lot of it. But then there's occasionally something different.
Yeah, of course.
So Vix, I'm just like, okay, hands, forearms, biceps, because you've got carry medley with like stone, sandbag, all of that stuff. You've got a squat, which usually, if people are going low bar, ripping through their elbows really bad. Then you've got log, which for most people, if their clean starts to fail, log is pretty shit on their biceps and forearms and grip. And then you've got a heavy, heavy arm over arm pull. So everybody, I'm like, all right, make sure your hands are fine. Keep a watch on your forearms, because once your forearms creep up, like you with middleweights, once your forearms creep up and they get to a point, you can't fix it.
It's just
you manage it and hope that something doesn't pop. Yeah. So trying to look at comps like that. Middleweights was the same. It was like sandbag pickups, holds, axle cleans.
Yeah, and it depends on you, like where you're coming from too. Like I think I had a very hard time with middleweight series, giving myself 8 weeks after doing no strongman and not really exposing myself to any high threshold tendon tissue tolerance stuff.
We get it. You don't need to train for things.
Yeah, no, I do. That's the problem. I broke every step of the way. 8 weeks was not enough time. Like that was probably the poorest performance, because I broke all the way. Because I just wasn't ready to push how I pushed. And I think that's like a big part of it, is understanding like where you're coming from and what you need to do to try and bolster, like try to give yourself a buffer coming into these comps to make sure that you're not going to injure yourself or not have to deal with those niggles or like tissue tolerant issues such as knees and forearms and stuff like that into the competition.
Well, that's where everyone thinks an off season is like their chance to catch up in strength. And they're like, this is my chance to get statically stronger and then come back to a comp prep. So that's, people think their off season is like, okay, I've got to catch up. And I've got to thrash myself. And it's like, you have to fix it.
You have to do both.
You have to be as healthy as you can before comp prep starts, because it just gets worse. So like 100%. If you thrash yourself in an off season and then come into a comp prep broken, but going, I feel pretty strong.
I mean, especially if the comp prep is you reaching.
If it's very static, it's maxes,
if you're
it's
reaching,
heavy. So
totally agree.
There's plenty of things now that I do that are just like non-negotiable. This is my warm-up now, and this is my warm-up for life.
Because you have a similar issue or similar breaking points or tolerance issues. Your back, for example.
Well, I've bulged 2 discs in my back. One's like L3, which is small and didn't really know what happened. Would have just been a bad day of like, oh, shit. And then when I got the scan later on, it was like L5, S1. That was like worse, that had like nerve pain, the works.
Ouch.
And that's just there. Like it can regress. The bulge can regress, but it can also, inflammation can push on a nerve. So there's heaps of like back extension, rotation stuff. Make sure my thoracic's good enough so that my lumbar doesn't cop it. That I did for like 9 months to rehab it. And then slowly I just forgot to do those warm-ups. And I'm like, my back's good now. And then all of a sudden something tweaked and something went. And I'm like, oh, why? I'm fixed. I'm like, oh, when was the last time I did those warm-up things?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's why.
And to clarify, this is now a staple every day for him. It's not before deadlifting or before squatting or something that's going to maybe cause back issue. It's 5 to 10 minutes every day for you.
Yeah, because every session I need extension.
Yeah.
Deadlift, squat, log, bench.
Yeah, it's predominant in all days.
Stone, everything I need to get into extension. If you can't fully extend or like lean back in strongman, if you couldn't stand there and like look over behind you and lean back without pain, like you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to get into a log rack position. You're not going to be able to get into a good deadlifting start position. Like it's just going to get worse.
Yeah.
So that's just every day now. I'm like, all right, I need to do this until I can get to here. And I'm like, okay, I can probably pick up a log now and not fold.
Yeah.
And actually do my reps.
And each athlete's going to be a little bit different. Yours is back. My shoulders are never great.
Yeah.
So if we're doing log press or like an overhead day, I'll just have to spend a little bit longer than what he does to like warm up my shoulders and go through like my routine independent of what he does, because he can do some face pulls, tricep push downs and stuff and just like warm up a little bit and he's kind of good to go. Where I need to do a little bit more work to make sure like my shoulders are happy and feeling warm and ready to rumble. So everyone's a little bit different. I mean, and my deadlift day, I can go and pick the bar up and I'm fine.
You could probably go up and start at 200.
Yes.
Pick up the bar and then keep going.
Yeah.
If I walk into the gym and pick up a 200 kilo deadlift, I will fold like a lawn chair.
So everyone's going to be a little bit independent. And I think what Leigh was saying around looking at the competition is probably a really big thing to look at in your preparatory work in terms of accessory work. If it is a bicep heavy competition, well, then making sure there's plenty of bicep accessory stuff in to make sure they're happy and healthy. If it's a posterior chain dominant day, making sure you're doing some more mobility, recovery or prehabilitation stuff to warm up your back or make sure you're on top of it from week to week. It's going to be comp specific in terms of your accessory work or prehabilitation work, just to kind of be on top of what the what events demand, especially because most events will see them be very, very dominant in certain things.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously the key ones are going to be bicep, back, posterior chain in strongman anyway. And then just knowing yourself as an athlete, what are your non-negotiables throughout the week? Is it like, what are your weak points and what do we need to do daily to make sure we're working on that, whether that's like a mobility thing, a stability thing, or whether it's just like a certain body part needs to be on top of those sort of things.
I think people try to just get too smart or try to pick up all the little 1%ers and then forget something like that. Like they try and like, I need to do this to do this. I need to eat this. I need to take this. I need to inject this. I need to do this. And it's like at the end of the day, if your back's cooked,
can't do much about that. Besides
it doesn't matter what your test level is. It doesn't matter how many carbs you ate before training. It doesn't matter about the intricate
going to be able
accessory of this and this.
And that's probably the other thing is like watching, and this is what we're talking about, knowing you independently and knowing the competition is we see people watch a cool guy on Instagram, show them a warm-up routine and suddenly like their warm-up routines or accessories become this and this and this and they do.
Yeah, I've heard people that have got 20 different warm-ups to get to their main work.
Yes. And it's like, no. What is for you?
Yeah.
What is independent to you? How does your body feel? And I mean, this is something that comes when you're more advanced. But if I come into squat and my hips feel pretty good, but my knees feel trash, I'll spend time on my knees and not my hips.
Yeah.
I don't have a static warm up that is fixed every time.
You won't just do the McGill Big Three and everything's solved.
I don't just do the McGill
or the lock three.
Or like I really like the MST like Big Five or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I won't just do that every day because that's 10 minutes of my session that I could spend doing something that like my trunk feels fine, my back feels fine.
That's also his Big Five.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I could pick a.
What's your Big Five? Yeah,
big
100%.
Four.
Yeah, Big Four. Or like what's
Pat and the Big Four.
Yeah,
McGill's got 3.
Yeah, Leigh's got 4. He's right in the middle. 4. I can get you one. I can get you slightly better than McGill, but slightly quicker. But like that is one piece of the puzzle. And that's a great thing if like trunk's feeling bad, but like what if the trunk feels fine?
Yeah.
If I come in and I feel pretty solid, but like my shoulders and elbows feel a little bit shit. So like I need to spend time on that. Why would I waste 10 minutes on doing this static warm up that's sort of fixed when it's not what I actually body. And like, that's my lower body.
Yeah.
My lower body might change from week to week, depending on what actually, when I move in the gym or when I start warming up. If I do a set of kettlebell squats, I go, oh, my hip's a little bit sore. I might do some like little like hip raises, or I might jump on a roll or whatever it might be. You actually have to kind of be in tune with your body and understand what it needs from day to day. If my thoracic's a little bit tight because I've been sitting down all day on the office, sort of in a flex position, then I probably need to do some more thoracic extension stuff or rotation stuff. So that becomes a priority. So you have to prioritize what your warm-ups are based on how you are feeling on a given day.
Yeah, there's no bad exercise.
No.
Or there's no bad warm-up routine, but you've got to pick it based on you. If you come in and just do clamshells and glute med stuff, but you have really stable and mobile hips, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
Like, you may as well just punch yourself in the leg and be like, yep, I feel
Jordan
that.
Shallow
I feel
talking
that.
about
Sweet.
the guy playing water polo, splashing his face with water
Yeah.
to like cool down. It's like, bro, you don't, you've done it. You're good.
Yeah.
Like, let's work on what actually needs work.
Yeah, so you can start really broad and go, okay, I need some shoulder stability stuff, some thoracic mobility stuff, and this, and then eventually realize, like, for me, my shoulders aren't unstable.
And
I can grab an upside down kettlebell and just do this all day. So I don't do that.
Yes.
My thoracic physically doesn't move. So I spend 10 minutes like bending myself over a bar.
Yeah, totally. I'd absolutely agree. Yeah, I think it's okay to have a broad spectrum or when you're starting out, having a routine that you kind of go through, but the routine needs to eventually, as you get better understanding of your body and how it feels, need to be relatively fluid, or have a arsenal in your little, what do you call those things? Bow, quiver.
Hat.
Hat.
Quiver.
In the Hogwarts hoarding set.
Yeah.
That if things aren't feeling good, like, you have an arsenal of different things that attack certain components of the thing that you're about to do that preps you specifically for that based on how you're feeling on the day.
Yeah. And then take it a step further. If you can walk in and deadlift and everything feels great, and it always feels great, and you don't have to spend time doing that. If you start position shit, maybe spend some more time on a 60, 100, 140 on a bar. Yeah. Spend more time figuring out balance and positioning of the actual movement. Don't lay on a foam roller thinking that that's what you need. Yeah. Yeah. It's just prioritizing time.
Agreed. Time is of the essence, right? Thanks for listening to the Strongman Say. Thanks for tuning in.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it's done.
Yeah.
Call it. Done. See you later. Bye.